but the communication piece and being proactive, I feel like I see more of the emotional side of this, and I'm sure Joe has worked with this as well, where he's usually dealing with numbers, where I'm getting a student coming in with two sets of parents, maybe one parent is driving the process. And honestly, the impetus for this was last year. I had a few wonderful families that I worked with that were divorced. One was very, very amicable. Mom and dad, were good friends still. They were on all the communications together. I had one more traditional family where they weren't best friends, but you know what? They were like, we're putting our differences aside for the best interest of the student. We're on the same page about what our budget's going to be. This is what it looks like. A lot of transparency. And I had a family that was not. And, there was a lot of hiding of assets and a lot of animosity. I had to split up who I was talking to and when. And it became weaponized where the parents were like, the one parent was encouraging the student to apply to schools that were totally out of the range with the understanding that dad was going to pony up. She got into a few schools that were way out of the budget. Dad said, absolutely no way. And she was really left with one affordable option. And, who was heartbroken? The student, that they really hadn't accomplished anything other than pigeonhole the daughter into one option that they could financially afford. So that's really the goal. I think when we work with the students and families is being very sensitive to the fact that this is a very hard process. There is a lot of emotion, again, animosity. There's a lot of communication block, but we want to work through that because we want to make sure that the student isn't the one that's paying the price for that. So we really think it's important to have that budget conversation with your ex-spouse. As much as you dislike them, there needs to be transparency. There has been a lot of questions in the chat, and Joe, you might want to filter through the chat a little bit or the Q&A while I'm doing this, but
Mhm.
a lot of questions about what if I don't want my ex to know how much I make? How do we determine who's financially putting more into the students' financial contributions? We do have a tool at the end that we're going to share, and Joe had mentioned like that worksheet that he kind of walked you through. If you really aren't sure, that the worksheet at the end is really helpful because we feel like it itemizes almost every single thing that you could be putting money towards for your students. So we'll get there at the end. Um, and being transparent with that student to say like, okay, like once we've had that conversation, this is what your dad plans on providing, this is what your mom plans on providing, this is our overall budget. We don't plan on spending more than $40,000 on the cost of college. If there is something that exceeds that, that could be on you. And like Joe said, really talking about, if you plan on taking out loans, with being an educator or being a computer science major, this is kind of what we're looking at. So again, just kind of trying to put the emotional piece aside and having a very pragmatic and practical conversation. Um, I like to take into account the social fit and emotional input from students of this process. So again, this is hard sometimes to hear, but if there is a lot of animosity maybe between stepmoms, stepdads, if they might not have as much stake, maybe they are part of the filing process, but if the sight of a stepmom being in the same room with the biological mom and they can't get past that, like it might not just be the biological parents that really need to sit and have this conversation in an adult manner. Again, being aware and open to the input of your 17 and 18-year-old and like what makes them feel the most comfortable as well. And set time to have, again, the college money talk. Obviously, it needs to be had, whether it's at a kitchen table, whether it's maybe through an arbitrator or a mediator, if that's the way that this needs to work, or someone like Joe who's going to just sit down and put those financial pieces in front of you. Um, but also, like, this is a very stressful process for everybody, especially if this is your first time doing this, your first student. Um, we always encourage at Estrella to have, a time, maybe a Sunday afternoon, like if you're having a Sunday dinner with your family, to say like, okay, let's just talk for 10 minutes about where we're at on this. So it's not sprung on the person um, in the heat of studying for an AP exam or after a baseball game or before a music theater performance. Like you want to have consistent communication about this process because it is very stressful. And the same thing maybe goes with that ex-spouse. Like, are we still on board? Hey, I'm going to fill out this paperwork. I'm going to submit this. If you do feel like you can have those conversations with them.
Yep. Yeah, we have to be in our role uncomfortable having uncomfortable conversations, and we'll bridge the gap. Understand it's savings, it's cash flow, and it's loans, and ultimately let's have it. Let's have a conversation ahead of time. Give it some air. Have it start the conversation early. Don't wait until the last minute when you're looking at financial aid award letters side by side.